And start of a new week. Thought what we might do look at some of the Osensei pictures. Okay. Now, if we can get into this one, notice how naturally straight he is. There's kind of a radiant quality to him. Okay. And he's fully extended here. And this is an interesting one. This oftentimes, he's kind of going like this. And obviously the person is falling. It's not, you usually go this way or this way, but he's just like that. And notice the eyes here, soft eyes. He's taking everything in, but there's a lot of focus right at this point. Yeah. And I don't know whether or not this was a continuation of the previous one, but right. And notice how aligned he is without making that a form. And again, I'm not sure this is a continuation, but you see there's a follow through right at the very end. And how he's focused here and yet is very conscious of what's going on. And you get the feeling that his mood is very light, but very focused simultaneously. And this is an interesting one right here because he's, see the alignment here. He's both conscious of the fact that there was an attack in the technique and also the fact that he's the center, everything around him is the circle moving around him. Therefore, there's this situation, and then there's just him as the center, and they're in kind of perfect accord. And here you kind of see in other words, if we make a form of this, then he's adaptable. You can see all of a sudden, point, sphere. Okay, so his movements are very, very natural. And how right here, how ready he is without anticipating or tensing. Now he's up probably explaining something and somebody's there. So there's a lot we can kind of learn. This has always been one of my favorite pictures here, where he's in the ikkyo motion. But his attention can be both right here and also in what's going on around him and how natural his posture is. This is also a real nice photo. I wish, we could try to do the whole thing where it's, you put it on the screen, but, and so that's just, we can learn a lot just from looking at the photos of him, okay? I mean, each of them is almost like a mandala. So he's very natural. And a very adaptable natural. It doesn't make a form of standing a certain way. He can be this way. When sitting out there, he's still there. Everything around him is like a sphere. You can go that way without going that way. Let's see. And we alluded to this earlier, but Athletes and actors frequently visited Morihei, seeking his counsel on how to improve their performances. So, he was not an actor, and, he was a martial artist, which, included the use of his body, but, you wouldn't qualify him as an athlete. Sadaharu Oh, the Japanese Babe Ruth, picked up a number of hints from Morihei, including his sage advice requiring timing. Do not try to guess how fast or slow a pitch will be. Just let the ball arrive at its own pace and be there to greet it. And so one of the things that Osensei told him, learn to wait. Learn to wait, stay in and as the center. The famous actor Katsu Shintaro asked Morihei how he should portray a blind swordsman in a film. And the answer was, create your own universe and bring everything into your own sphere, was the reply. And so these are two different worlds, the world of acting and the world of baseball. And obviously people looked at him and thought, there's something he has. I should ask him for advice. Now, for example, what Hikizuchi Sensei got was very contrary to what he told Oh, which is never to wait, move first. Okay? And create your own universe and bring everything into your sphere. So I'm wearing this t-shirt. Okay. So in some sense, what he did do was he created a whole universe or space of harmony. And out of that, he brought everything into his sphere. In other words, it's a great idea, but somehow just being able to bring it into our own sphere, that's what we're all working on. Okay? And working on that maybe as something that's not just, okay, now I want a universe of absolute accord, harmony, and love. But I keep bouncing off the fact that whatever's out there, there's so much that is in opposition to it. And so, according to Mary Heine Sensei, he had this incredible energy field around him. And people would, and I got this, I never per se felt that, but I studied with people who actually did. And people could tell when he was on vacation from the Tokyo Hombu Dojo. I said, he's gone. Energy was different. And in some cases, they're walking to the dojo. And they say, feels like he's back. This is some blocks away. And then they find out, yeah, he was back. So there was something that he was doing. In other words, he was creating this sort of field of harmony. And I think his real wish was everybody could create that. And so instead of having all this discord, and then to bringing everything into your own sphere means that you're yourself. In other words, if somebody else, does that too, they're going to be themselves. But in doing that, if you're drawn into somebody else's sphere, that's kind of what he tended to do, I think, with the Aikido moves, is that, he created this space of absolute accord, and, we play acted attacking. So therefore, all of a sudden we would come into his sphere as he or she who stands on the floating bridge of heaven. There are other ways he talked about it, or no matter how fast the attack, he was standing in no time, no space. And it wasn't just an idea. And if we look at anything from here, how natural his movement and posture were. He wasn't worried about that or anything. It was just almost like, and expanding sphere out, emotion back to his center, that interior sphere, that things like kokyu, which has sort of naturally come out of that. So we have a lot on our table if we're going to do that. And, some of this, we're in the pandemic. And what I'm going to say is wear a mask, socially distance. But if we could sort of create around ourselves a sphere of health. And bringing everything into your own sphere is what kind of like the t-shirt right here. It means all of that is reinforced in talking with what's going on inside you. So you're not doing that to control, but rather to unify or activate that realm or universe you're creating out there. A lot of times, for example, these days, I'm doing it a lot less, but you go shopping, places that, people do wear masks and socially distance. And I try to put out a healing vibe. Affirmations, things like that. Because vibration, field is vibration. We are also vibration if we can start to. Okay? And I don't want to say, okay, then you'll be safe. No, we take the precautions. We socially distance. We try to cut down the amount of going out. Pretty soon we'll probably just be getting everything delivered in terms of the groceries. So watching how natural his movement is. And also what he told Mr. O, it's in the autobiography that Mr. O wrote. It was very stark. Wait. Don't be out there trying to make it happen. Create a sphere of harmony. Bring the picture into your own sphere. And wait. Then what happens is a harmony. Mr. O, however good he was, he could not hit home runs without the pitcher to throw the ball. In fact, one of the things that I found kind of interesting about the autobiography that Mr. O wrote He hit a home run in this last official game. And what happened? He's circling the bases. Of course, everybody's going crazy. He's a national hero. And you know what happens is a lot of times, your own teammates come and greet you as you're crossing third base going home. In this case, the opposing team did too. And so in the autobiography, he kind of states that at that moment, I'm sure he had this realization before, what Osensei had told him. That in some sense, there is no opponent. There's the polishing of self. And for that, we have a game. Aikido, you get on the mat and people attack you, and we practice these movements, which are really not about competition, but they're about refining ourselves to where we can create a harmony with whoever we're working with. And you find certain people are easier to work with and certain people are not, but we're working towards a harmony. And the Shihonage, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to crank, but then again, when I set to do that, so my partner kind of instinctively will set. But if I can, right about there on that turn, there's that waterfall flow. Bend in the river, waterfall, boom. Where I can bend in the river, waterfall. I can bounce off the weight and tension in my partner. I can start to settle. We're both in the same swimming pool. That sort of feeling right there. It's kind of what I see when I look at those photos of him. And somebody grabs the wrist for pulled out, but we're pulled out there. But all of a sudden, when we kind of settle in here, that feel of harmony starts to form. And then bringing somebody into your own sphere is more like, as the Nage, you draw uke in. As uke, you feel what it's like on that end. So you're looking at things in the training, ideally, uke and nage, from both viewpoints. Yeah, I think that's sometimes is missed, where uke and nage compete. Or sometimes uke will be a little firmer or whatever, or faster. Just so we learn how to do the movements and just being able to draw things into our own sphere, create your own world, realm, universe. Draw them into your own sphere. Boom. Nikyo. Oh. Sankyo. Oh. Yonkyo. Oh. So the training is both, so it can't be pulled out. In other words, the sphere out there, the field out there is the field. And, a lot of, I think, Osensei's words are to describe his field. And he had the capacity, creating his own field, universe, realm, to draw people into his own sphere. In other words, he wasn't there. And that part's hard. very entertaining to be out there, but just that motion starts to be very instructive. So if you watch his photos, how, yeah, I'm straight within a form. I want to outward on the uke, but be able to, you're tied here and also connected to. So your realm, your own sphere, center, whatever you want to call it. So those are things that we can start to bring into our own training. Sometimes it's so fast and there's a lot of stimuli. We get pulled out. But yes, so we're conscious of what's out there. But at the same time, we are somewhat conscious of our own breathing. Mind, eye, mind starts to calm down. Start to kind of feel your core and your feet base. And you start to kind of reside in your own sphere or your own center. At the same time, allowing all of that. So, yeah, we are, I guess we're going to go into the other room. We'll check before we do. Yes, we do have. Again, we want to send Cliff condolences for the passing of his mother. Okay, all right, so we understand you're here and you just keep observing what you need to, okay? What are we doing here? We are, okay, we're back here, right? And I think we're actually pretty good. Let's move this back a little bit more. Yeah, center that. Okay. And I'm going to move those backlights. They're kind of shiny. I can't really see the screen, so move this a little further back. This a little further over so I can see the screen a little better. We have background lights. We're trying to even out the lights here, okay? And a variety of things, just checking, for example, here. Get busy with an activity. Being active is good. I think Osensei is a movement art. But he had this sphere of calm. And having this sphere of calm, all that activity out there, he brought into his own sphere. That's just one way of examining it. The outer realm, active, times fire, inner realm, calm, water. So there he was, just in some sense, this balances out. We get out there, there's a quick, easy, settle, center, ground. We're back here. And we're also in tune with what's out there. Okay, so that's something, if his words don't make sense, which his words are very difficult, sometimes it's just good to look at the photos of him. They're like, for me, they're like mandalas. Okay. Looking for and not finding. Yeah. Okay. So, what I thought we'd do, variety of things we can do, is I'm using this because I could go longer with the staff, but this allows me more freedom in here. All right? And one of the things we're doing right here, this is kind of what we call the thumb down, thumb up change, thumb down, top, thumb up change, figure 8. Okay, this is thumb up, thumb down. I can change directions this way. And initially what it is a little bit, the world will draw you out. So I'm learning this and I'm going to be out there and, and visual what happens is I bonk myself on the head or I drop the staff. So there's a lot of activity out there. In fact, the activity of that world is, to some degree, it's endless right there. But practice in bringing all that activity into your own sphere. Boom, 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 boom. So, that's just this motion out there. You can focus, for example, on a basic move. Notice how I get caught up in the activity out there, okay? Or even though this calm here, I can also kind of get lost in it. And increasingly, you get drawn out when you're doing a movement. Oh, bring it into your own sphere. Oh. Bring it into your own sphere. So you can take a basic movement. Part of bringing it into your own sphere is, we've been working lately on the check down, like the grip nut. I grip from the top. I put the palm in the grip before I add the little finger. Then you add the fingers and the thumb. Really, right here, little finger, a little bit of ring finger, thumb, palm. You don't let the fingers drag out there. Some people kind of go like that. And the end. See, this is fairly short. I make it shorter if I go this way. So about an inch up. Okay. And right here. Notice how, if I'm this way, both shoulders are exposed. But if I got my triangle, point, base, and I tilt the body a little bit, and what happens is I'm standing as a part of a triangular wedge. If I go out here, you see this part's exposed. I go over here, this part's exposed. Now, the thrusting motion, well, I'm assuming the attack is coming from there. See, there I'm getting off the line to pull it back. And there, boom, I'm going to run into the attack. If I'm stronger, I'll win. If the attack is faster, stronger than me, I won't. Here, see how we're actually starting getting off the line. Boom. And so when you do the thrust, instead of that, what you're doing is creating a spiral. Boom. And you can create the spiral out there in the hands. But really, That's a straight thrust. But moving off, you get the spiral with the body changing, the tai sabaki. Okay, so those just your basic thrust. Now, one of the things we've been covering a little bit, there's a closing motion there. There's a closing motion with the sword. And this is taught. I close with the thrust exactly like I close with the sword. See, here you get a spiral, but the spiral I want. And now that, see, that's straight, 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 straight. But something's coming at me straight, 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 straight. So see how? So I can both receive that attack, get off the line of it, and also reply to it. And again, you can do it with the hands. This is the basic. Boom. Okay? And I was reading some quotes from Sadaharu Oh last night. And one of them that I thought was really interesting was he said something to the effect of, he had strong legs. He also had very quick hands. Okay. So he said, he said, chances are he could have been a good sumo wrestler. Okay. Strong legs. Okay. And quick hands, which would help him hit. But he said everything he achieved was through technique. And it doesn't mean that he was concentrating strictly on form. But the technique here is getting the very natural rotation of your body. See, a lot of people move off the line and they go that way. Now you do, it's an adaptable thing, but the tai sabaki. So you're both getting off of a line of an attack. Well, and certain things happen, for example, like somebody can come in this way. But one of the things about the tai sabaki gives you, in sports, what's called wingspan. See, here, but when the body rotates, you see I gain about elbow to finger length. And those are at the level of information. And putting that information into the body. Okay? That's form. But technique, the Japanese word waza, and I got this from one of Mr. Stevens' translations, has the term function in it. It's not just technique. And that's where a lot of Japanese culture, if you study with a master calligrapher or pottery maker or something, they're going to teach you the technique. But in learning the technique, you polish yourself. So one of the things for me, for example, this thrusting motion. Somebody comes and grabs my wrist. Whoa. It's the same motion. Okay. So this basic thrusting motion. You're both And yes, you can move off the line that way. You're adaptable. Boom. But it's not. And really researching it, the more I can just sort of, boom, just be right here with feet in concrete, with the rest of me totally free. Again, create your own universe. See, Katsuhaya Hi, Katsuhaya be that no time, no space place. Does it really exist here in this universe? No. So since they were somehow creating a universe, or tapping into a place within the larger universe, where it called itself no time, no space. But as knowledge out there, he was also through that bringing everything here into his own sphere. So it's like, boom. Okay. And the feet, you can lengthen it this way, but the longer, say, the less freedom I have. And of course, if I'm too this way, then I'm going to lose my balance when I turn my hips. So you find your own truth. Ground, boom. Okay. Now, striking motion. What I really want to do with that motion, you say, is see how the head is exposed? See how the other side of the head is exposed? See how both shoulders, both halves of the body behind that is. So I want to be able to boom. And I go the other way. Boom. So Mr. O spent a lot of time just checking his self out with a mirror. Leaning back too far, standing up too high. Posture of waiting. Okay. And again, I thought what he said was interesting. I had a lot of physical gifts, strong legs, quick hands, but everything I achieved was through technique. And again, you have to look at the fact that we think of technique, we think of form that way. And he was talking about a training for a certain sort of interior development. And for him, it was like, the act of hitting a baseball, which is probably one of the, or maybe the hardest things in sports. Okay? So we have this motion, this motion, this motion. See the triangle? See, just a little bit, this is part of the body. Here, the face, the other shoulder here. And be able to boom, boom. Now, the actual sense of the technique is interior development here. The way that he puts it, because he watches Aikido, he sees Osensei and says, oh, mind, body, and technique become one. Depending on, what's your particular avocation, there's technique to it. What he was talking much bigger than, okay, my technique has to get better. Yeah, I have to get better. I have to get better. And so the technique is a vehicle for me to learn how to to create my own universe, to bring things into my own sphere. That's an interior development. Now, as we sort of get, a basic thrust in motion, that's spiral. See, right here, I'm leaving this exposed. See that? Huh? Nikyo. See? Iriminage. So those are body changes, tai sabaki, right? Which Osensei, as far as I can tell, when I watch him move or see photos of him, he's moving very much as if he studied the spear in great detail. Spear can also cut. In fact, one right there, see I dropped a little too far. So, boom. Boom. You can learn a lot just by checking yourself out in the mirror. But again, you're looking at the mirror, you check that out, bring it into body feel. Boom. You want to be able to boom, real quick. Boom. See, that's a little too far that way. Boom. So you check. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom. 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 So I thought what Mr. O said, in a couple of different places in his own book, an Aikido, mind, body, and technique must be one. And I came across a quote that last night when I was looking through, not so much, I think it's probably said, it relates a lot to that last home run he hit. Because it was almost like he realized that a lot of who he had become, the other team, the pitcher's throwing to him, the fielder's trying to get him out. They were all a part of his own forging process. And he had this almost irrational, as do all champions, need to improve. And he realized all that came out of love. That behind all of that, he had a love for baseball. He had a love for kind of the actual forging training, the interior development. And he measured himself against games where there was another team and the pitcher's throwing at him. None of that would have been possible without the love here. And he had that realization, it's like, wow, whatever I am or what I've been really comes down to the fact that I needed everybody out there, every pitcher that ever threw at me, everybody that ever took the field against me, because when he rounds third base, is headed for home off that last at bat, his last home run, the other team rushes out to greet him. Okay? So that part of it is important. Now, if we're kind of looking at this, for example, well, guess what? Kokyu Ho. We're in a seated posture this way, but it starts the same way with the spiral. So you don't go like that with the hands. And I'm sure Mr. O, he had everything, and he could cut everything into very fine slices. And there was a technique to swinging on one leg. Okay, I'm sure if you ask Stephen Curry, he has same check down for his shooting, his basketball drills. So the training in Aikido, there's the activity of it, much of which is fun. You get a chance to work with a partner, learn the movements, become acquainted with the philosophy. But a lot of, if you stick with it, there's a deep love that the Aikido starts to kind of bring out in you. Okay, and that's hard to describe. okay? And it'll get you through periods of difficulty, disillusionment, all the chaos of the pandemic, okay? Boom, 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 boom. With all these movements, boom, we're going to check that. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so that's a little bit of a discourse on the technique. How do you, Osensei, Tojima Sensei, he would tell me, he says, you know, I know you're taught thrust, that's important, but thrust in a spiral, Rasendetsu. And so much of Aikido, even your own entering motion, is off of that. If you're doing a Nikyo, so the hip goes into it, but there's ground, and you can attack somebody with a Nikyo. Most of the time, the urawaza, something may come this way, so you are. And that off the line motion is also your hips turning into the technique. Right? And I think it was last class, which we haven't posted yet, the last online class, Friday. We go into the sword a bit with the check down. Sword's a little similar and different. So right here, let's say I'm facing myself. But see, there's an opening here and here, but mainly this wrist. The quickest thing somebody there says, forget the body, I'm going to take the wrist. All of a sudden, this is hit or cut. In essence, I'm done. So right here, there's a little bit of a tilt. So what would be, I would be extending that towards the left eye of whoever it is. And you see, when I do that, sword's a little different. I'm covering the wrist. If I go this way, the wrist is exposed. Sometimes, you know, what you do, or you go like this, and then you anticipate that motion. You take the wrist of the person who's come to take your wrist. Karma, boom. Okay? So, right? Now the cutting motion, right? And we work different things. The staff spear for me, I'm really working on the Tai Sabaki. Okay? Well, Sensei's sword work, if you watch him with a partner, boom, is very much like. If we're going to come to boom. Boom, boom, boom. Because when you triangulate the body, you get wingspan. And you know, 6 inches to a foot. And if you stay okay. And something we tried to cover last time, there was the closing motion. And one of the best texts I ever read on that closing motion is in Mr. O's autobiography. See, in sword, the closing motion is a double spiral. In fact, I grip, not this way, I grip diagonally, because it makes it easier to add that closing motion. If I grip this way, it's almost like right here, I run into something right there. Boom. You can do it that way, it's quicker. And again, palm first, then little finger. Palm first, then little finger. You get that V here, right in the middle. And when you finish that motion, it's a double spiral. In baseball, there is where you rotate over this way. But Mr. O studied the sword to better understand the mechanics, the technique. Not on contact, but through contact. And so the lesson Osensei gave him weight. Arms aren't fully extended. I close. A little better, arms aren't fully extended, I close. Arms fully extended, close. Arms fully extended and energy going out the blade, close. That's the last one's what we want. See here, I'm closing with my arms almost extended. That's better. My arms are pretty fully extended. So the lesson is a paradox because the longer you wait for the closing motion, the better. Arms almost extended, arms fully extended, energy key going through and then extend. Then the question is how far your extension is. And the more extension you have, both in your hands, through the blade, and the later the closing motion, which is not hands, it's full body. Boom. The quicker the cut. Okay. We've done this one. And that's your basic form cut. Okay? Now for me, form and technique are totally different. Form is just getting the basics. But technique is about application. Now here, this is interesting because we have to extend out, but what this does is you're extending down. This was Tojima Sensei's cut. Okay. Now here, that was a cut where I hadn't fully extended yet, and I closed. That one was pretty good. My arms were extended. Now, that was a better one because I'm extended into the sword before I close. Which means I'm extending past the sword. So it's a paradox. The longer you wait, the faster the cut. The longer you wait, the quicker the back. The longer you wait for the follow-through, the more range you have on that shot, and the quicker it is. Okay? Now here, let's say we were fencing with the phantom. Boom, 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 boom. The sword, if you just do this, it tends to make you too heavy. So I alternate that with that. But also sometimes boom, 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 boom. Somebody's raising, take the body, take the wrist, take them. Boom, 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 boom. And be off the line of their cut. Okay? So, and natural, just like Osensei. I mean, nowhere near as good as him, but maybe on my journey to do that at some level. Okay? So you're off the line. Boom. And one thing here is when you're off the line, you're also giving yourself wingspan. Ultimately, it's not just the sword in a better position, but the extension through the sword. And sometimes you add sound to that. Okay? We are kind of at that place where we're going to go back into the other room. Okay. So what we're going to do is check in. Okay. Rehydrate. And so we kind of broke down the real kind of basic structure. Points that I find important. Okay? So those are altering it a little bit. Notice how, you kind of forming a triangle wedge. And now I'm holding something different than I was in the other room. I want that to feel as much as I can like my own hand. I'm going to be too tense. I'm going to be too lax. And that's the same grip I want as much as possible. You hold a person, you tend to get drawn out. Or a Nikyo, a Sankyo, a Yonkyo, Gokyo. Okay? So, there's a lot of work. Okay? Anybody, well, actually, Cliff, you just do what you need to do. Bonnie, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to add?
No questions today. Thank you for good classes.
Yeah, well, anything you'd like to add though? You don't have to have a question. Anything you notice?
Um, Today, I guess my awareness is lower than it has been, but I was feeling more of the flow with my posture was able to settle back more. I really liked what you said, the posture of waiting. So I was trying, when I moved the weapon, I was trying to be relaxed.
Yeah.
Inhale as it moved and exhale. So I was just trying to do a really basic, trying to get into the flow with just breath and feel. But I did notice my posture was a bit better today, which made some of the movements feel more natural.
Well, posture, for example, what you do is when you pick this up, see, I'm out there, whatever you see out there, for example, this is a little too low. Yeah, there's the other thing, Osensei we do a lot of times, which is invite, right? Invite. You watch him sometimes. But he's inviting, he's not asleep right there. So, there's a point where, but there are basic things. For example, if I'm extending, my hand goes out in a spiral. Even kokyu ho, for example. The raise is not this way. Raise is in a spiral motion. Boom. Yeah. So those are fine points. They're just fine points. Like Mr. O, he used to train in this one room at his coach's house. And so after he retires, he's got, he made some money playing professional baseball at the highest level. So he's got a good house. He builds this room in it. And he's waiting for somebody to come and learn from him like he learned, or basically, he and his coach, they learned together. The coach was the coach, but the coach, they train out, the coach was looking at O and something like that. And guess what? Nobody ever came. And so, they have lunch and he says, I've been waiting for somebody to come and teach them like you taught me. And the coach says, Oh-san, you're going to wait for a long time, right? And what was sort of, I don't know exactly how it worked out, but like even his coach was like telling, yeah, okay. And finally, this young kid comes along and says, yeah, okay. He's got some chance. He's got a chance to have a chance. You see what I mean? Not a chance, but a chance to have a chance. So he says, yeah, I'm working with this other kid now. I don't know where it'll go, but maybe he has a chance to have a chance. That's all Mr. O had was the chance to have a chance. And he made a lot out of it, just in that sort of, you'd be surprised that book is very detailed. But on the other hand, all the details come about because in some sense, it's a study of the spirit as he goes further. It's a book called A Zen Way of Baseball by Sadaharu Oh. And it's one of the best Aikido books I've ever read. And, I was mentioning it with the last class, we were going to Stephen Curry and Sadaharu Oh. And I mentioned Tojima Sensei, who, you most, go to Japan, people know who Stephen Curry is and Sadaharu Oh. But how many people know who Tojima Sensei is? Well, he was a factory worker when I first met him. And he didn't even graduate high school. But he's one of the most intelligent people I ever met. I've been through grad school, and one of my first Aikido teachers, Robert Fraser Sensei, was a PhD from Harvard University. So, you know, and Tajima Sensei just had a kind of native intelligence. It was very down to earth, cut right to the quick of it. Okay? And so, you know, the thing about the technique is kind of, you know, as I said, the word technique here, people understand that as form and how strong is your form. And it's very different if you kind of go back to, and I'm not sure everybody understands that, but Mr. O, when he said, in Aikido, mind, body, and technique must be one. And so, you know, he took that to heart because he never really did any Aikido technique at all. But he did study the technique of a sword. And, you know, what's interesting about him was, you know, he learned obviously to cut this way, but he's left-handed. So he swung the bat this way, not this way. But a lot of the photos of him with the sword, he's in a batting position with the sword. He's learning to cut for the baseball swing, not your standard, but you know, he's learning how to cut, boom, this way, boom. See, so one of the things, if you swing with the arm, you get an arc, okay? But one of the things here is you are extending the arms. And if you go this way, you loop with the right hand. And right here, see, this is left hand. And the left hand is your major hand with the sword because it's closer to your center core, isn't it? And if you go like that, there's a little bit of a gap between here and here. Whereas here, boom, raise, extend, cut. So those things are, you know, just, and likewise, when somebody grabs your wrist, if you're caught a little short, you relax and re-extend. And if you relax and just go into their power, but you relax, create the spiral. So things like that, you know, are very easily missed. And you can learn them at the level of information. And then it becomes part of your form. But what, you know, and Mr. O was, you know, he was concentrating on just that motion, but you had to face pitchers who threw a variety of different speeds and a variety of different pitches from different angles. And some Hall of Fame American pitchers like Tom Seaver, Bob Gibson, they're in the Hall of Fame here. And Bob Gibson just didn't give O anything. But Tom Seaver, you know, unfortunately died earlier this year off of complications from coronavirus. They're both Hall of Fame pitchers. And Bob Gibson, Mr. O, yeah, he was okay. And then Tom Seaver said, look, he had no hole. You couldn't throw the fastball past him. You might get them out because you're supposed to make an out, even if you're really good, you make an out 3, you know, like 7 times out of 10. Breaking pitches, he could hit every breaking pitch. And he could handle where you tried to deceive him by changing speeds because he understood waiting. And so, you know, he said, yeah, he had no hole, right? No ski in Japanese. And what he said about Bob Gibson is, you know, contrary to what Gibson says, yeah, because, you know, they were both part of all-star tour go to Japan, right? American all-stars play Japanese all-stars. And he says, yeah, he got lit up a couple times by Mr. O, right? And so, there's an area where, some athletes, they just don't, they're kind of like our president. They never want to admit that anybody can do anything to get them out or hit them. But Mr. Seaver was a little more, I think, comprehensive. He said, yeah, he got Gibson pretty good as well. So it wasn't like, well, Gibson had his number, but I didn't. It was more like, nah, he hit us both. We're both Hall of Fame pitchers. And if you really think about it, if he was an Aikido teacher, he wouldn't be O-sensei, but he'd be O-sensei. It'd be kind of a funny thing. Say, hi, O-sensei. Thank you very much. And there's O-sensei, but there's O-sensei. But, he's in his own way, if you, the book, unfortunately, is out of print, so you can get it, but you got to order it. You got to pay way more for it than you would have just bought it. So if you know somebody who has a copy of it, ask them to loan it to you, treat it well. My first copy of it was paperback, and I gave it to Linda Holiday Sensei. Then I was talking about it so much that one of my students actually went online and got me a hardcover of it. But the thing with Sadaharu Oh was when he used the term technique, okay, or to some degree when Stephen Curry talks about your basic form shot, it's more than just what you would call form. That if you look at it, Osensei was somebody that understood the forms of Budo, but he also went way past that. He said in Aikido, there are no forms because it's a study of the spirit. Now, people like Curry and O, their study of spirit is through what they call technique because they're athletes. Nobody gets to that level of being you can be an athlete, but being a champion is somewhat different. And with Osensei, what he did is he switched archetypes because he was warrior archetype. But then he became the champion archetype. But he was a champion of love, a champion of harmony. You see what I mean? And so at that particular point, you're talking about how the body changes, how the body changes, how the body changes. He was creating this whole universe of harmony, love, whatever you want to call it, Aiki. In fact, he said, Aiki is the basis of this universe. It's just that we are so out of touch with ourselves, so we're working to, I don't know if we'll ever close it, but you look at somebody, for example, what I find really interesting is that the Warriors' 2 draft picks this year, James Wiseman, 7-foot center, and a 6'3" guard, Nico Mannion. They both attended his basketball camps. And so, they had a chance to actually play alongside him as players. And, I just watched them. And, when they learned, like one of the major things Curry says, he says that all great shooters have one thing in common, which is absolute mastery of their basics, okay? Which means Larry Bird's basics might not be the same as his basics, or Klay Thompson's basics might not be the same as his basics. But what I noticed for both, because you see them in photo shoots and everything, is both of those kids, 10 fingers towards the hoop. See, if I'm going to go this way, Draymond shoots this way. That's okay. That's his thing. But you see right there, see, if you go this way, you're getting two separate lines of energy. But if you're now right here, then boom. Okay. Rotation, counter rotation, and follow through. And your follow through, the later the follow through, the more you're doing all of this, the quicker the shot and the more range you have. You know, I haven't done anything, but if you go through what O says and what Tojima Sensei's cut was like, you'd say that the speed of Curry's release is the fact he doesn't go like that. Because all these things right in alignment, boom. And the later you release, the more you have of your core and your base in that motion. He can do a little flipper like that. It's not that it looks faster than somebody else's release, but I've seen him at the head of the key with 7'1" and 7'2" guys on him try to serve a shot, and he does a dance or two, and they kind of draws him out of the center, and he shoots over him. And that's that quick. And he's got range. In the cut, closing before the arms are fully extended, fully extending the arms, and then closing. Extending through the sword and then closing. Extending through the sword out and then closing. Boom. And everything else is getting everything out there faster. And the technique, again, what Mr. O said, mind, body, technique have to be one. But at that point, you see mind, body, and technique become a vehicle to touch something called spirit. And in a very reasonable place, which you might call spirit, and what you might call love, are pretty much the same thing. Not in this world, which is too much conflict and too much distractions going on. Let's go back more towards the original of the universal design and who we are. We come out of spirit and we come out of that love. Before Osensei said, create the world family. And since we're all that family, we're just out here too divided and too conflicted. So he said, Mr. O and the actor Katsu Shintaro, create your own universe. So if we can, it's not to create this universe where you're right all the time. We've had that for the past 4 years. And then draw it into your own sphere. And if we all did that, it's like Mr. Curry said, hey, Larry Bird's basics and my basics might be different, but we have absolute mastery of our basics. And what is interesting that, you know, that's kokyu ho, isn't it? Right about there, that's the cut. And right about there, boom, is the swing. So, you know, I mean, it's the point where a lot of times, I mean, what's O going to learn from this martial arts guy? No, a lot. And what's a fairly popular Japanese actor going to be when he's asked to play this blind swordsman from this guy? A lot. So if we can kind of do that, in other words, kind of create our own sphere of Aiki, you know, world where the spirit, where love are primary. And drawing things into your own spheres, but taking responsibility for putting that immediate situation or universe that's yours in accord with what it's supposed to be. It'll be a better world. Anyway, I think what we're going to do is call it for today. So tonight we have lesson 6 in our Tai Chi beginning class. Okay, so that'll be 7:30 to 8:30. We're going to start another beginning sequence, 30 movements, January 11th of next year. Observing, you know, the holiday schedule, I intend to still do the Wednesday night, kind of, we call it, Master Troy called them club meetings, all right? Where we can kind of do the complete form and maybe go a little bit more into the 54 movements, okay? So that's the Tai Chi, okay? Aikido-wise, what we usually do is we take from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve off. And we usually have a New Year's Day training, 11:30 to 1. And so what we're going to try to do, weather permitting, is to have the New Year's training at the park outside. So that's weather dependent. If it's raining, obviously we can't do that. We'll have to do it inside. But that would be kind of good to aim for. So, okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you, Sensei.